What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got another live fantasy football mock draft for you. This time through Yahoo. It is a 12-person half-point PPR format, and we have got the first pick overall, so it should be pretty exciting. Now, before we get into it, a quick reminder for all of you that are interested, go ahead, get a copy of the 2020 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide now. All the details in the description. But for a great value, you get top 150 overall player rankings in standard and PPR formats, individual player tiers, projections, bios, are picks for breakouts, busts, and general fantasy advice. So really, go ahead, get a leg up on the competition. You can't beat it at that price of only $10. But with that being said, let's get back into this draft because we are on the clock and we've got about 10 seconds to make a pick. But look, we don't even need that much time because this first selection, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey. The only two real choices are McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley. Personally, I prefer McCaffrey because, in my eyes, he has a higher floor than that of Saquon Barkley because of what he can do as a pass catcher and just the way the Carolina offense is set up with Teddy Bridgewater under center. He kind of has more dink and dump passes, gets rid of the ball a little bit quicker. And look, I don't blame you if you don't like Saquon Barkley because he, maybe more so than any other running back in the NFL, has a higher rushing ceiling, and he can really pile up the yards. You also expect some natural regression from Christian McCaffrey. And at the end of the day, look, whoever you go with at 101, whether it's McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley, I don't think you can go wrong. Right now, I'd probably say 95% of the time, if not more, it is Christian McCaffrey, however. And speaking of, Saquon Barkley, let's look at some of these other names that have come up so far. We've got McCaffrey, we've got Saquon Barkley, then Michael Thomas, then Ezekiel Elliott, and then somewhat incredibly surprisingly, Davante Adams at number 5 overall. And honestly, I think this is the first time I've ever seen Davante Adams as a top 5 pick. Now, sure, it's a half-point PPR format. Maybe that helps. But Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara were still on the board. Then you see Derrick Henry being drafted as well. Honestly, I was about to say I thought it would be pretty, cut and dry the first 7 picks in some order. I expect them, once we get closer to the start of the season, to be, McCaffrey, Barkley, Zeke, Michael Thomas, Kamara, Dalvin Cook, and then Derrick Henry probably to round it off. But Davante Adams really kind of sneaking up here in this draft, but no problem. I keeping us on our feet, and if he gets back to what he did in 2018, in what he was kind of looking like he would do in 2019 before his injury, it could be a pick that pays off. In the 8th slot, like we said, we see Dalvin Cook, which is probably the biggest steal of the first round because I have him as a tier 1 running back along with McCaffrey, Barkley, and Zeke. So getting him at 8, incredible value. That's why I really do think this year the best value pick probably between 6 and number 8. Then number 9, we see Joe Mixon, then Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb, and Tyreek Hill. Chubb sneaks into the first round. Personally, I think he's a great standard format scoring running back, but when you get into the half-point and PPR formats, that's where it gets a little bit tricky because Kareem Hunt is still there. He's going to take away a lot of passing opportunities, and Chubb's really ceiling in the pass catching department is probably the lowest out of all the top end running backs. That's why I'd rather have a Kenyon Drake. I'd rather have a Miles Sanders. I'd rather have a Josh Jacobs. And speaking of Kenyon Drake, he is the second pick in the second round because after Tyreek Hill ends things off in the first round, we see DeAndre Hopkins, then Kenyon Drake, then Julio Jones, followed by Chris Godwin and Miles Sanders. I was really hoping that Miles Sanders would be available to us at the end of the second, but that's probably wishful thinking. I'm really high on Sanders. I think he's going to get a lot of volume. I think as far as pass catching skills are concerned, he's probably one of the better year 2 running backs in that department. And then you see Aaron Jones afterwards, and the more and more we, get closer to the start of the season, I think you're going to see Aaron Jones' ADP kind of drop a little bit. I mean, it already has, considering he was a first round pick before the NFL draft. Now he's in the second round, mid second round. And it's to nobody's surprise because he might be Aaron Jones, one of the biggest regression candidates for the season in 2020. You look at the touchdown number, that's probably going to go down. You look at the health of Jamal Williams. You look at the way that they drafted. You look at Devontae Adams in the passing attack. If Adams doesn't get hurt, that's probably going to be a bigger factor in all that. So for that reason, the arrow really pointing down for Aaron Jones. But let's go ahead and look at this big board because we've got 3 picks into our turn. Travis Kelce was just selected, but it's all right. I see a couple names that I still really like. Odell Beckham, seeing him go in the second round, definitely surprising. Usually a third round pick, but, I guess you're going for the upside there. Again, personally, I'd be staying away from Odell Beckham in the second round. Probably you could even make the case that he's an end of the third round selection, considering some of the names that are still on the board, and Allen Robinson, and Mike Evans, and Adam Thielen, Juju Smith, DJ Moore. I think that's where Odell should be slated, closer to the DJ Moore category. But look, it's our turn, and after Travis Kelce and Kenny Golladay are off the board, George Kittle was the selection right before us. So that means right now we went Christian McCaffrey. So we kind of have the advantage of not necessarily having to draft a running back right now, unless we really saw someone that we very much so liked. I'm going to go ahead and look at those running backs to see if that's the case. Clyde Edwards-Helaire pass. I'd only be considering Chris Carson and Todd Gurley at this point. I like James Conner later on. I think I'm going to go ahead and roll the dice that he comes back to me. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and actually select Adam Thielen here. I'm a big fan of Thielen in PPR formats. I really like his upside. And look, depending on what platform you're using, all these rankings are going to be very different. Because just using it as an example, you see here Amari Cooper and Cooper Kupp, the way Yahoo has them ranked, they probably don't go until the end of the third round, maybe even start of the fourth round, which I think would be absolutely crazy. Both those guys are, early third round type of talents. Adam Thielen as well, in my opinion. No more Stephon Diggs. Lots of opportunities for him. Now let's talk running backs because we did consider running backs here. We briefly went to that tab. However, we decided to go elsewhere. And I'll tell you guys why. Because first and foremost, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the top ranked running back on Yahoo. But, I mean, we're not really paying attention to that because obviously on our own big board, we've got guys like Chris Carson, Leonard Fournette, Todd Gurley all above him. So those were really the real choices there. But I decided maybe a little bit more valuable to get another wide receiver one as opposed to maybe some riskier running backs here in a Todd Gurley, in a Chris Carson. I will say now is probably a good time to capitalize on Chris Carson's value going down a little bit with the addition of Carlos Hyde. I think probably a lot of people were a little bit bullish on him to begin with. Now kind of reacting a little bit too quickly on the Carlos Hyde signing. So probably we're probably in a position right now where his value is closer to what it should realistically be, or maybe still a little bit lower than that. But either way, after Chris Carson, we see Allen Robinson. Not a bad pick, but again, when Cooper Kupp is still on the board, I'd much rather go Cooper Kupp. Same with Amari Cooper. Then Todd Gurley. I really like the Todd Gurley pick. I definitely have him over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And that's the thing with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Sure, he's the number one ranked rookie running back. I agree with that. But all these rookie running backs, we said it before when breaking down this group, they're all joining a running back by committee to some extent, which makes me nervous. I don't think these guys are going to be workhorse running backs. And when you're in the third round, you've still got a chance to get one of these workhorse guys. And the fact that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going ahead of Chris Carson, ahead of Leonard Fournette, ahead of David Johnson worries me. I think he is being extremely overvalued. And speaking of David Johnson, let's get to his name because he has made his way into the third round here. Kind of just scrolling down a little bit after Allen Robinson, Todd Gurley, then DJ Moore, then Juju Smith, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes. One right after the other. End of the third round, I actually think that's decent. That's probably where they should be going. Then David Johnson. I didn't get a chance to scroll all the way down, but David Johnson was ranked a lot lower on these Yahoo rankings compared to where he went. So kudos to the person that snagged him here, seeing some value. I was secretly hoping he'd fall all the way down to me, in the fourth round, and I would have been ecstatic. Then Melvin Gordon, A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's another one of these guys that is going to suffer in value because this isn't a pure standard scoring league. Then we go to round 4, Jonathan Taylor. Similar situation, Jonathan Taylor, when James Conner is still on the board, I can't fathom taking Jonathan Taylor, who's not even my number 2 rookie running back. That's DeAndre Swift. I think Taylor and Marlon Mack are going to be a 1-2 punch, essentially. Then finally, Amari Cooper in the 4th round. Great value. Le'Veon Bell there as well. James Conner, a little bit kind of surprised to see James Conner go this early in the 4th round, but I've been saying it for months now. James Conner's value is extremely undervalued. People are catching on, though, because his draft stock is slowly starting to rise. I mean, people all of a sudden had forgotten that James Conner is on the Pittsburgh offense with a great offensive line. With a healthy Big Ben, he's going to get all the volume. And the guy is the primary running back. That's absolutely sensational. And it absolutely just killed me to see Leonard Fournette selected with that pick right before us. He was going to be our selection. It was going to be him and David Montgomery. Okay, so we won't stray too much from the plan here. We'll still go running back. That'll be David Montgomery. That'll be one of the selections. But I do think there is a big drop-off in running back talent afterwards. So let's go back to our big board here and see who else is available. I see Devontae Parker, Mark Andrews, Robert Woods. Yeah, it's tough to get excited about this group of guys. Robert Woods is my next best available player. I think that him and Cooper Kupp are going to have probably similar types of seasons. It probably comes down to the touchdown department in terms of, their true separation between the two, whether it's a lot or, not all that much. But to me, it's Robert Woods. I was really hoping Leonard Fournette would fall or James Conner would fall. Wasn't meant to be, but again, this highlights what can happen in these drafts when you have one of these extreme picks in back-to-back situations, whether it's first overall or last overall, because then, more often than not, if you really want one of your guys, just because there's such a long gap between you making another pick, you're probably going to have to reach on some of these players. So just be prepared to do that. Stay true to your big board and get the guys that you want to land, because then if you ignore that, kind of what we see here is you see that drop off in talent, especially at the running back position. I'm not as worried as I would normally be because I have Christian McCaffrey carrying the load, but the running back position still leaves a bit to be desired. I on the flip side really like my wide receiver situation, but again, what do you prioritize more, the running back depth, the wide receiver depth? I think it does come back down to that. We'll see what we're able to do here in the later rounds, how we can go ahead and maybe balance it out, but tough not being able to get David Johnson or James Conner or Leonard Fournette. I've been in this situation before, having the 101 or the 102. For the most part, they're essentially the same, but I'd say this is a little bit tougher sledding because usually I've been able to land a James Conner or a David Johnson. But again, I think this is probably truer to what mock drafts could look like closer to the start of the season, which is a little bit rare, but again, probably a little bit more useful to everyone that's watching. So take it as an example, learn from it. That's what I'm trying to do as well. And go ahead and adjust for next time. You'll definitely see us do just that. But let's go ahead and kind of break down this draft so far. After that Robert Woods selection, Devontae Parker, he was a wide receiver I was considering definitely. Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, Singletary, Dak Prescott. So a couple quarterbacks selected there. Mark Andrews. Wasn't really considering Mark Andrews. I think he's more of a standard type tight end. Then Stephon Diggs, T.Y. Hilton. Great value pick in my opinion. Zach Ertz as well. With Phillip Rivers on the Colts now, I'm on the T.Y. Hilton hype train, especially considering the fact that you can get him in the 5th round. Then we go to the 6th round, another guy that I was hoping could fall to me, and Darren Waller is the first pick in the 6th round. Probably wishful thinking that he could fall to us, but oh well, good pick in the 6th round. There's still another tight end in Evan Ingram that I'm high on. If he falls to us, he'll probably be our next pick, one of the two. I'm also looking at adding another running back. And right now, looking at the situation, as you could have guessed, we're not going to be going any of the rookie running backs. So that probably means we're going to go ahead and look at, I believe Kareem Hunt might be my next best available running back. Yeah, I would have Hunt over Geis, over all of these guys. If we had some more clarity on the Tampa Bay situation, I'd go ahead and take a shot on one of these guys, but I'll go ahead and go with the sure thing. I need to add running back depth at this point, and Kareem Hunt is the best option by far. He'd be much better if this was full point PPR. I think he'd be an easy weekly start at the flex play. Right now, a little bit tougher to trust, but I still think this is where you have to go with this pick. So he will be one of our choices here as long as he is still on the board. Other selections that we should be considering, Hunter Henry ranked way too high here. It's like people are forgetting that Phillip Rivers has left the Chargers. That offense is going to look pretty different. So for that reason, I'm not all that high on Hunter Henry. I'd much rather go ahead and land Evan Ingram, who we will have the chance to do just that here, folks. But let's go ahead, land Kareem Hunt first, pick him up. Maybe a little bit of a reach here, but again, because of the way that the running back situation played out for us, I think it was the choice that we had to go with. Then we're going Evan Ingram. Personally, I like what Evan Ingram brings to the table more so than what these other players do. They all have their own set of question marks. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Ingram, whose ceiling is incredibly high. We saw it last year. When he's healthy, he's a top 5 tight end. I probably would have considered quarterback here if it wasn't for the running back situation and needing to add depth there. The quarterbacks that I would have considered, which I don't think that either one will be available to us just because it looks like there's some auto picks. So I anticipate some quarterbacks going on a run here. Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, both guys that I really like in the NFC South. You can add Tom Brady to that. Pretty much any quarterback in the NFC South, just as long as it's not Teddy Bridgewater, is a viable fantasy football option. And speaking of one of those quarterbacks, you see Drew Brees go. I'm guessing it won't be that long until we see Matt Ryan's name off the board either. So let's go ahead and go back to our draft results after our selection of Evan Ingram. You see Josh Allen, you see J.K. Dobbins. Man, I absolutely hate that J.K. Dobbins pick for all the hype that he's getting joining that great Baltimore offense. Mark Ingram is still there. Honestly, I don't really like any of the Baltimore running backs at this point in time. That is one of the most crowded backfields. I don't want anything to do with it, and you still have to contend with Lamar Jackson. So for that reason, I'm staying away from these guys. Matt Breida afterwards, Philip Lindsay, Hunter Henry goes, Drew Brees, and then you see the random San Francisco defense selection. Again, I attribute that to auto picks, so don't put too much stock into it. What is worth noting here is that Matt Ryan is off the board. Unfortunately, we will not have a chance to add him to our roster. I'm big on the Falcons this year. I think they're going to go ahead and have a bounce back year offensively. And personally, I'd be trying to buy any stock that I can when it comes to that offense. Now you see Matthew Stafford go, and then the Pittsburgh defense here in the 8th round. It's going to get a little bit ridiculous here, folks, because you're going to see some kickers, you're going to see some defenses, and that's why I really appreciate some other platforms, maybe something like a Fantasy Pros where you can edit the positions that you can draft, because usually I turn off defenses and kickers, because with these fantasy mock drafts, what we really want to see is these skill players and where they should be going. I mean, it's no coincidence that we see certain leagues play without a kicker position, or that we see numerous owners go an entire draft without picking up a defense and just stream defenses. So again, that's why I personally am going to focus on the skill position players here so we can get a little bit more from it. And I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but while we were going on that rant a little bit, Tom Brady went off the board. Very unfortunate. So all of a sudden, we are in a situation where our quarterback uh, starting spot and our RB2 spot leave a bit to be desired. And I can definitely tell you, full disclosure, I have had better drafts at the 101, and I'll highlight what I think some of our mistakes were and how we can improve on it next time. But I think the biggest thing is right now that we're going to see is running back depth. That is probably the biggest thing. I'm not all that concerned about the quarterback situation. Sure, it would have been great to land Drew Brees or Matt Ryan or Tom Brady, but let's go ahead and click on over to the quarterbacks, because there's still some names here that I'm excited about. You still see a Carson Wentz on the board. You still see a Ben Roethlisberger on the board, even an Aaron Rodgers. They've all got potential, but the one that's highest on my personal big board is Carson Wentz. So I'm going to go ahead and pick him up here. Um, and then let's go ahead and look at some wide receivers. A guy that I'm very excited about is Brendan Cook. So I'm going to go ahead here and draft him while I can. I don't want to take a chance and lose out on him either. But let's go to our draft results, because we've kind of gone ahead and, for the most part, filled out our starting roster. We have got 2 bench spots already taken care of. We have got our starting roster as well. And I think this is right around where we will call it a day, because from here on out, you're going to see a lot of auto picks. You're going to see a lot of defenses. You're going to see a lot of kickers, and there's not all that much value to gain from that. So maybe I go ahead and queue up a couple guys. I'll add Damian Williams to the queue. I'll add Ronald Jones to the queue. And for now, that'll be it. If I had gotten a chance to land a Dalvin Cook or a Zeke, I'd go with handcuffs as well. But since that's not the case, let's go back to our main roster here and kind of evaluate it. So Christian McCaffrey, the 101, great. Mike Evans, next, great again. Adam Thielen, that's where you can start to maybe say, probably should have gone running back here. And I understand it, because it's such a long time until your next pick in the 4th round. I was taking a little bit of a chance. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, consider if we had stayed with that Thielen pick, and Leonard Fournette, who, if you remember, was selected right before us in the 4th round, was still available, we'd have Mike Evans, Thielen, Christian McCaffrey, and Leonard Fournette, and I think this roster is a lot better than. In fact, right now, I'd probably grade-wise give this, just because I'm a bit disappointed in it, the way it played out in the 4th round, and with the quarterback situation, probably give it a B minus. You can maybe even say C plus, but room for improvement nonetheless. The quarterback situation, again, could have been addressed a round earlier. I think the major takeaways here, though, are don't be afraid to reach on a player when you are one of those extreme picks with either the first or last pick overall. Now, on the other side of it, having Christian McCaffrey gives you a little bit more freedom to wait on running backs, but again, don't wait too long, especially if you are in a league that prioritizes the running backs. I think this is pretty similar to what you might see in a draft, all things considered, when we get closer and closer to the start of the season. So I'm not all that mad about it. We can go ahead and potentially queue up another tight end here as far as backup to Evan Ingram is concerned. But no need to do that at this point in time. I think we've got the big picture available to us here. And let me know what you guys thought. Let me hear it in the comments. Did you agree, disagree with these picks? Do you guys have any other fantasy questions? I will do my best to answer them. And reminder again, go ahead, get your copy of the 2020 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide now. All the details in the description. Great value. Pick it up, get an edge on your competition. And in the meantime, if you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in future videos.